During his only book signing outside London, award-winning author Terry Pratchett chatted to the Southport Visitor about what he thought made his books successful.
I think possibly that the publishers used hallucinogenic ink. I can offer no other explanation. Well, a hell of a lot of work, I suspect. And a nation, I think. I spent 5 months reworking it and rewriting it, and really banging my head on it to get it as good as I thought it can be. And even now, I think I let it go before I'd really finished working on it. But that's the thing about writing. You know, you never sort of relinquish a book. Sooner or later, it escapes. But the nice thing is that so many of my fans are so well versed in the Discworld series, for example. If I ring up and say, I've got a couple of characters walking from such and such a bridge to the Thieves Guild. What pubs do they pass? And just look through the fire. Oh yeah, they go through past the Jolly Fox and the bunch of grapes. If you can get characters right and you know how the book's got to go, the process feels as if you are not making an effort. Whereas, on the other hand, it must be you doing it all, because it isn't being done by the fairies and no one's pulling any strings. And usually in the mornings, when I'm writing, I wake up with an idea or so about how the day's writing ought to go. But usually the phone rings and shatters all my carefully worked out timings.
Terry gave a sneak peek into the working processes behind his books, which have sold more than 55 million copies.
Certainly at this time of year, I'm having my second cup of tea in bed at night. Mind you, I'm certainly not in bed at 9 at the other end of the clock. Well, I mean, I try to write all the time. At the moment, especially this year, there have been so many other calls on my time. My writing time has been very fractured. But there's part of my brain working on the book, whatever happens.
Terry also revealed to the Visitor why he became a writer.
Because I wasn't any good at anything else. That would be absolutely true to say I did not enjoy school. In fact, to say I did not enjoy school would not be to fully encapsulate the lack of enjoyment I had with school. But I did have a considerable amount of enjoyment in reading, and I was the quintessential kid who basically you should have locked him in a library, made certain he got out once every day for a breath of fresh air and to run around the library a few times, and maybe a teacher turn up for 5 minutes every Friday to see what you were reading. Oh, I'm glad you're reading that. Why didn't you try such and such? You know, what with the local library, or 2 local libraries actually, and the local second-hand bookshop. I think that's where the bulk of my education came. I think school did its duty by me, by teaching me to read. After that, it was up to me.
The well-known writer who visited bookshop Broadhursts of Southport was delighted with the Market Street store.
I can't actually believe it's real. I just find it extremely hard to believe that there are bookshops like this still, with like books, you know. And in the manager's office, there's ones I'm going to steal if I can shove them down my trousers and get down to the street before he notices. Like real old ones that you long to open. And I think it's great that the children's books were made like this, because lots of effort goes on the covers and things for children's books, and it's grand to see them all face out and looking attractive.
Terry discussed the difference between his writing for children and adults.
People now recognise. I mean, I get into kind of trouble. No one quite knows exactly where to pin me. I know I won the Carnegie Award for a children's book, but I could see the librarians thinking, well, is he really a children's author though? It's a children's book. So it doesn't actually matter whether it was written by a hippopotamus of any age. I mean, it's a children's book. And I think people can get a bit suspicious if you blithely waltz from doing a children's book to an adult book and a children's book and back again. But manifestly that's what I do, and when I write them for children, they're for children. When I write them for adults, they're for adults, and you can tell the difference. And I've got 3 authors peering over my shoulder, because one thing that children's, not authors, 3 editors, one thing that children's editors do not like are books for children, books for adults masquerading as books for children, ones where you're waving at the grown-ups over the top of the children's heads. So they'd put paid to anything like that. But for many years now, I've been alternating children's book and adult book, and it's really very refreshing process. Nation was a children's book, although there's plenty in it for adults, and I'd probably say that the kids will read it and enjoy it, and in a few years' time they'll read it again and enjoy it in a different way.
He also took time to offer new writers one piece of advice.
Stop writing to me saying, can you give me any advice? Because the only advice I can really give them is be me, because it worked for me. And I don't know, otherwise also be you, because being you might work for you. The point is, everyone asks me for advice on how to become a writer. If you have to ask for advice, you're not a writer. It's like saying, what advice have you to anyone that wants to be a tightrope walker? Well, find a tightrope. And if you're not dead after 5 minutes, it may be you're a tightrope walker. Why not just try writing? It's very simple. Pen, paper, computer. It's simple. Read lots of books. It's actually not a difficult thing to do, and I can say that because I managed to do it, and I was by no means top of my class. But my God, I read the number of books I read between the age of 10 and the age of 17 would be, I read at speed, and at one point I had 136 library tickets. If I had to recommend a book for any aspiring writer now, especially if it was going to be fantasy, because that's the one area where I could speak, I would tell them to read a book called London Labour and the London Poor by a guy called Henry Mayhew. I'm almost certain it was Henry. And it was like Charles Dickens without the fiction. He, in late Georgian London, he went around talking to the people on the streets, the match girls, the kids, the mudlarks. But it was about a completely different world, which was real, absolutely real. And a world away from, we have no idea what poverty is by comparison to the poverty of people in the East End of London in those days. So different. That sort of thing broadens your horizons in every respect, and that's the sort of thing writers should read.